Today, I'm filing applications for warrants of arrest before Pretrial Chamber 1 of the International Criminal Court in the situation in the State of Palestine.
That was the International Criminal Court's prosecutor, Karim Khan, announcing the filing of arrest warrants for officials from Hamas and the Israeli government Monday.
On the basis of evidence collected and examined and analysed by my office, I have reasonable grounds to believe that 3 senior leaders of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Daif, and Ismail Haniyeh, bear criminal responsibility for the following international crimes committed on the territory of Israel and the State of Palestine from at least the 7th of October 2023. Extermination as a crime against humanity. Murder as a crime against humanity and as a war crime. The taking of hostages as a war crime. Rape and other acts of sexual violence during captivity as crimes against humanity and as war crimes. Torture during captivity as a crime against humanity and as a war crime. Other inhumane acts during captivity as a crime against humanity. I can also confirm today that I have reasonable grounds to believe, on the basis of evidence collected and examined by my office, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant bear criminal responsibility for the following international crimes committed on the territory of the State of Palestine from at least the 8th of October 2023. The crimes include starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, willfully causing great suffering, serious injury to body or health or cruel treatment, willful killing or murder, and intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population, as well as crimes against humanity of extermination and or murder, persecution, and allegations of crimes of committing other inhumane acts.
For more on that, we go to International Criminal Court defense attorney Christopher Black, who spoke with us from Canada. Chris, could you first give us just a very brief outline of where we are procedurally and what's next? And then I'd like to really discuss this case against the other one with the ongoing war, which is the case against Russia's government, which doesn't have a pair like this one with Hamas and Israel. There's no Ukraine involved as a defendant in the other case.
Right. Well, procedurally, the prosecutor at the ICC, Mr. Khan, has now announced he's going to request an arrest warrant for the people named in his document. The 3 Palestinians from Hamas and Netanyahu and some other fellow, Gallant, I forget. So what will happen now is there'll be a hearing before a panel of judges, and he'll present what he says is the evidence against all these parties, and then the judges will decide to issue a warrant or not. Likely they'll go along with what he says, and the warrant will be issued, and then you'll have to wait for further proceedings until these people appear in court somehow, in this court. And I don't envision Netanyahu ever appearing in that court. We know his position on the ICC. And the charges against him, he's rejected them, and they have no jurisdiction. Hamas, well, although Palestine has granted them some jurisdiction, even though Palestine is not a member of the Rome Treaty, they do have some jurisdiction given to them by the Palestinians over Hamas. But in any case, I can't see them being arrested except by the Israelis. Then I would envision a strange scenario in which the Israelis hand them over to the ICC, but don't hand over themselves. So that's what's going to take place next. Of course, if a warrants are issued against the 3 Palestinian members of Hamas, that would pretty much stymie any attempts to negotiate a peace deal with Netanyahu, because then these people can't travel. If they travel to a member state to negotiate, Turkey or somewhere, or Qatar, who are members of the ICC, then they're duty bound to arrest them.
Yeah,
So
like we
that
saw
pretty
in
much
South Africa, like the
right.
problem that
So
President Putin had with that.
exactly. So in a way, the ICC step has uh, being used to paralyze the peace process. So instead of stopping a war, they're actually promoting its continuance.
Okay, so now, meanwhile, so first of all, one of the Hamas defendants is the senior negotiator.
Right.
He's the guy that actually shows up at the table. So, of course,
Yeah.
he's one person that's not going to show up to negotiate now.
Right.
And Israel doesn't show up. Netanyahu, at least he's not showing up himself to negotiate for sure, nor
Right.
are his senior officials. And Israel is, in essence, said, we only want to negotiate after you give us everything we want. So,
Right. Exactly.
so that kind of leaves it kind of a weird situation for the ICC, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. But then you see what this is all political. This is not acting like a usual criminal prosecutor in the United States or Canada or Britain or somewhere in Europe. This is a political decision and a political action. And you asked about the difference between this situation and Ukraine and Russia. They issued a warrant against Vladimir Putin for a strange accusation of kidnapping children when he was rescuing children from the war zone, but not any other crimes. But they have no jurisdiction over Russia whatsoever. They have no jurisdiction over the Ukraine war, except for a letter that the Ukraine regime, after the Maidan coup in 2014, gave the ICC, giving them some jurisdiction to investigate crimes, but only the crimes of the Russians, not their crimes against the Donbass Republic people. So their crimes are to be ignored, only the Russian crimes are to be examined, and the ICC accepted that. And that was a political decision. So and of course there's two countries involved. There's Ukraine and Russia. There's now a war, an international war. Whereas in the situation with the Palestinians, they have a strange statement in their document which says that there's an international war between Palestine and Israel, but they don't define what Palestine is, right, where Palestine exists. And yet they say that the conflict between Hamas and Israel is a non-international conflict. That is an internal conflict, which is a lie because Israel as a state has invaded the lands of the Palestinians and illegally occupied it for decades. And Hamas is just resisting against that occupation. So they cannot claim, but by stating that in the document, they're actually taking the Israeli side that that's Israeli territory officially, which is not true legally. No international lawyer would say so, but Khan seems to be saying so.
There's all kinds of interesting standing questions here that pertain to what the status of Palestine is as a state or not. I'm talking about for the ICJ now. And also the legitimacy of the government in Kiev, which was installed by a coup backed by the United States.
Right.
And now we have, if ever the successor to that coup somehow gained legitimacy, the loss of legitimacy as of today with the end of the presidential term for Zelensky and the canceling of elections. So
right.
You have all kinds of issues with standing to go anywhere too.
Exactly. And as Vladimir Putin said, I think yesterday, or when he's leaving China, that yes, we won't recognize Zelensky after the 20th because his term ends, even though martial law continues. No doubt he'll stay in power because the Americans want him there. But he also said that his regime comes out of the Maidan coup. It has no legitimacy whatsoever because the coup, it overthrew democracy in Ukraine, and every government, successive government since then, has been a puppet government of the United States, which was organized that coup.
Yeah, the elections were held by the coup, et cetera, et cetera. And
right.
You have poison fruit of a poison tree situation with that, basically.
Exactly. So,
but also the point that Putin was making was interesting, which is that if we negotiate and reach an agreement with this government, and he didn't have to say it again, but which has never kept an agreement, an actual legitimate government coming to power later that challenges successfully the legitimacy of this government would not be bound by the treaty because they're not empowered to make agreements.
Exactly. The whole thing is a house of cards. If you just touch one card, the whole thing falls apart. And the same with the Israeli case, because the Israelis are illegally occupying the lands of the people they're attacking. And when you look at the investigation that they claim they made, it's quite they state openly that there was a one-sided investigation. They only talked to the Israelis. They did not talk to anybody in Hamas or any Palestinians that we know about. They don't say so. So where's the investigation? And they're supposed to present this to the judges, but it doesn't matter, you see, because they know they're never going to get Netanyahu, but the Israelis might end up capturing, who knows if they can, some of these Hamas people. And many of them, I think all three of them have been jailed by the Israelis for long periods of time before for other alleged crimes, resistance against the Israeli occupation. I think Yanni, the chief negotiator, was in prison for 20 years, was finally released. and they make all these accusations about hostages, but they don't mention the fact that Israel holds thousands and thousands of Palestinian hostages held without trial and without even charges. And they're just being held to intimidate people. But they don't mention that. So,
and there were no particulars and no evidence offered or any of that. So we'll see where.
No. So where is it going to go? We'll wait and see, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Same as the one against Putin. It was just made for effect, for optics, for propaganda. And so now they've quieted the crowd that wants to charge Netanyahu, deservedly so. Okay, we're going to issue an arrest warrant for him. They know it's never going to be acted on, but the front and center was the charges against Hamas. Those are the first charges presented, and that's what attracts a lot of attention. We're going after Hamas, and so the Israelis they provide the Israelis in fact with a defense by their allegations. Hamas did these horrible things. Israel reacted, and the only thing they seem to be charging Israel with is mass starvation, a siege of a civilian area. They don't mention the bombings on the slaughter of 35,000 civilians through bombings.
Right.
They're now only talking about starvation and stopping humanitarian supplies, which is a much lesser charge, I think, to me. But by charging Hamas, they give the Israelis an automatic defense to that. They just say, well, we had to do that because.
Chris, thanks a lot. Appreciate you helping us parse through this stuff.
You're welcome.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.